Hey y'all, Daniel Aaron here, your guide to vibrant living, holistic vibrant living, all parts of who we are count in creating a vibrant life. Now, the year was 1996. It was my very first season at Omega Institute, holistic learning center, they called it. We called it New Age Summer Camp for Adults. I was brand new. I had just come from a year ago, a year before that, having a spiritual awakening, having gone into a deep depression, coming out of that saying, what do I do? How do I live? What's the way to be a human? All that I knew before didn't work anymore. And so I went to Omega. Had a lot of doubts when I got there, like, oh my goodness, what is this place? There's a lot of new agey stuff. There were a lot of people I didn't know. My old shyness kicked in. Anyway, I rode through that. Maybe it was day 4 that I was there. Somebody said, hey, are you going to that breathing thing tonight? And I said, I don't know, what is it? And they said, oh, it's really good. It's great. It's super intense. And I was like, all right, I'm in. So I get there, and there's a small room, maybe 40 people in it, and there's a very kind woman gives this talk about how this kind of breathing works and instructs us on how to do it. Then we get into it, and I get into it just a little ways, and in a few moments, people around me, we're all laying on the floor kind of close together, people all around me seemed to be having these intense, powerful experiences, and I could hear screaming at times, I could hear crying, I could hear the woman who was leading it talking to people, kind of like counseling or talking them through things, and yet nothing was happening for me. And I was doing it diligently. I'm a good student. I was following instructions. Nothing was happening until I saw across the front of my forehead, like a ticker tape sign, it said, this is going to work for everyone else but you. And it was one of those beautiful lucky times, when something just kind of clicks in your life and you realize, like, whoa, I see the truth. And I saw in that moment, how ridiculous is that thought? It's ridiculous. What a crazy belief. And it was so apparent that it dissolved in that moment, and instantly I hope the sound is okay for you. It's getting a little windy here. Instantly, it was like suddenly I was at the top of a luge and going downhill super fast, like I was just on a ride. And, suddenly there were intense emotions, and I've never had an experience quite like this, so visual, so esoteric. Maybe you call it astro travel. I had no basis for this. I had no understanding. I didn't have any of the knowledge, spiritual knowledge that I have now. I hadn't explored that world at all. And what happened is, there I am, my physical body's laying on the ground breathing, and then I had this clear vision and experience of being in my sister's body as she was preparing to jump to her death off the Coronado Bridge outside of San Diego. I had no reference for this. It was just instantly clear that that's what was happening. Right? And I'd seen the bridge, so I did have a visual for it just after her death. And it was literally like this. Like, she was there on the breath, holding on to a chain link fence behind her, leaning out over the water. Right? And in that moment, instantly the adrenaline was pumping in me, and I could hear the noises from the cars on the bridge behind us. That's how it seemed at the time. I didn't know, was it me, was it her? I could look out and see the harbor and all the kind of marine commercial traffic, and I saw from her perspective what it must have looked like, how sort of dark and dreary and depressing. And I'm panicking inside, like, oh my God, what do I do here? Now, mind you, like, no idea what's going on, just instantly in that reality. And then she jumped. And I had no ability to stop her or do anything about it. But there was no time either. It was just instantly, we were gone. And from that hanging position, it was like, we just started plummeting toward the water. And I remember it so clearly, like we were going down, and the rush of the air was like deafening in our ears, and the water below was like rising up to meet us. And I, of course I knew what the conclusion of it was going to be, and she had died instantly when she hit the water, they told us. And yet before we hit the water, we were back up at the bridge again. It was like Groundhog Day. Suddenly we were back at the beginning, hanging out there over the water. And, at first I thought, well, second chance, or there's something to do. And as soon as I sort of reoriented, boom, we were back in it again. And then it just started looping. And I tell you, y'all, I thought I was going to explode. My heart was pumping, and I was crying, and I, my physical body, I'm laying on the ground, my physical body was arching up like this, and crunching down, and the pain was so intense, and I just wanted it to stop. And in that moment, the woman who was leading the process came over to me, and she put her hand right here on my chest, which was sticking up in the air, arching up like this. She put her hand on my chest, and she said, "I'm coming into a new way of understanding." Just that. A simple affirmation, a simple mantra. Her touch was gentle yet firm. It was loving. And as soon as she said those words, it was like this tension released from me. And then I was out of that loop. I was out of my sister's body. And then I had this flood of tears come to me. And I realized, and this was 5 years after my sister's suicide. And I realized that I had been holding on to guilt and pain in part because I didn't want to let go of her, and I didn't want to let go of the love that I had with her. And it was so powerful, y'all, in that moment. What I came to is I can let go of the guilt and the pain and the I wish I'd done something different and wasn't right, and still have the love for her, still have my connection to her, and remember her when I was 7 years old and she came on my birthday and gave me a Betty Crocker cookbook for kids. And I remember when I made my first dinner for her, and it was I forget what they called it, but it was a piece of bread with a hot dog and a piece of cheese melted on it and a toothpick that tied it together at the top, and there was this little, almost like some kind of weird American burrito. And how she put out eggs for me on a Easter the year before that, and I was able to, in that moment, through the breath, and really that was the key, to let go of the pain and remember the love. And that for me was such a powerful transformational experience. It was a peak experience, and I had had some in my life before, transformational moments, though before that they had been either just random, like they just came, which was a little scary to me. I felt out of control, or maybe induced by some substance, which was powerful and yet also didn't feel entirely helpful. It felt unpredictable and outside of me. And here it was, this new experience where it was just my breath being the gateway to spirit. Just by breathing in a certain way, I got to this peak state that completely changed my life. And in many ways, that's what launched me into being of service to others and seeing the power that can happen, the transformation that can happen for someone in just a moment. And so, in answer to the question, I just phrase it back to you. Can we live in a way that we take pain and love apart, even if they were linked in our past? You know what my experience is and what I would say, and I give you my encouragement to find out the truth for yourself. All right, enough said for now. I thank you for being here. If you're interested in more like this, we go deeper in the Sangha in our community. If you got comments, questions, please list them below. And I wish you well, thriving, awesomeness in your vibrant life. See you later, y'all.